Big thanks to Napoleon Grills for sponsoring this episode.
This steak is called the donkey steak. It's not really a donkey, but what it actually is, I'm going to tell you later. It's not really a shark fin either. It's not a donkey, not even Batman, not even the Joker. It's actually a combination of muscles. And it's a very popular piece of meat in the Tex-Mex kitchen. Tex-Mex. We got an audience. The trained eye might have already recognized that this is the tritip, a beautiful piece of meat with a nice fat cap and that you can actually use really well to replace the picanha steak with. But why is this steak nicknamed the donkey steak? And the reason that it's called the donkey steak is because the butchers used to give this to the newlywed housewives that had to cook their first roast for their husband. And of course the butchers wanted to make sure that the housewife did a good job, so they gifted them this steak. A beautiful steak that you cannot fail. Something that you can't mess up, to prove to your husband that you are a good wife. And the way that they said it in the old days was that this is such an easy steak and roast to make. Even a donkey wouldn't screw it up. You gotta put yourself back in the old days. I cleaned up most of the excess fat. Of course, I left a little bit on at the bottom just to make it extra juicy and tasty. And at the top, I still have my fat cap right there. Do not ever take the fat cap off the tri-tip because it's such a delicious thing. Leave it on. Even if you're going to take it off on your plate, then do whatever you want. But for now, leave it on. And to make it extra tasty, I'm going to carve into the fat cap and create diamond shapes on the outside of the fat cap. And I'm going to season that fat cap heavily with salt. This is a finishing salt. This is not regular salt. This is salt that dissolves very easily. During the cooking process, most of that salt will render off and fall down into your grill. But while cooking, it will make your fat cap extra crispy and tasty. This is ready. Maybe a little sprinkle on the other side, just a little extra. And now this is ready to be cooked. And I'm going to show you the way that you cannot fail cooking this roast. And I mean literally, even if you never cooked before and this is your first roast that you're going to cook for your husband after you married him. People don't do that these days anymore. Did you get married? No. I got. She didn't cook me anything. I had to pay for dinner. And then I decided to learn how to cook myself. Different subject. I'm going to use the meter thermometer. This is a wireless thermometer pan that I'm going to stick into my roast, and make sure you stick it in the center so it measures the lowest temperature in your roast. It has two parts, the one that you stick into the meat and the part that sits on the outside, because it measures two temperatures. One is the core temperature of the meat and one is the core temperature that surrounds the meat. Now, I'm just gonna hit use Wi-Fi. I'm gonna take out my phone and I'm going to set it to cook a tri-tip. I'm gonna fill in the temperature and then I'm good to go. This method is the reversed sear technique, which means I'm going to bring it up to temperature at a low indirect heat and then I'm going to let it rest. And after that, we're gonna sear it off for a beautiful crust. And all of that technology is right here in this thermometer. Come on, let's fire up the barbecue. I'm going to turn on the outside two burners and thereby creating a direct zone. So this is going to be the hottest part of the grill. And on the other half, I'm going to have a cold part of the grill. This is the indirect zone. And that's where I'm going to place my donkey. I'm going to point the thickest part of the donkey towards the hottest part of the grill. And it's time to close the lid. Let the barbecue come up to a temperature of around 140 degrees Celsius. And then wait for the meter thermometer to let me know that it's done. While the tri-tip is getting up to temperature, I'm going to make a delicious side dish. I'm going to chop my courgette real fine. And then take a beautiful red bell pepper and chop it fine. Baby bell pepper, once again. A whole white onion, and of course a little bit of garlic. Then I'm going to turn on the sizzle zone on the side of my Napoleon grill, warm up my Scotsburg cast iron pan, drizzle in a little bit of olive oil, fry the onion, fry the garlic, then add the courgette and the bell pepper. And once the ingredients start cooking, I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. I'm going to scoop that goodness, the stuffing, into the tomatoes. And this is all based on having good flavorful ingredients. If you have unripe ingredients, this is not gonna taste as great. If you don't have a good olive oil, it's not gonna taste as good. And that's what it all comes down to with this side dish. Look at how good. These are ready to go on the barbecue, but before I'm going to do that, I have to check on my donkey because I got a notification on the meter app and it says it needs to rest. That's beautiful meat, it's been cooked. It looks beautiful already, but it's going to get even better later on. I just got a big chunk of wood out of the fire. Whoa, look at that. I'm gonna put it on my grill. This is beech wood and it's smoking hot. This is going to do two things for me. It's going to cook the outside of the tomato and it's going to give off a little bit of char and smoke flavor. That's going to make this side dish exceptional. So I'm going to place on the tomatoes and they're going to sit there for around 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to close the lid and let it smoke. The tomatoes look absolutely beautiful and they're done. You can see the cracks in the skin. The meat of the tomato warmed up and that's all I need. Now it's time to work on side dish number 2 and this one you guys are going to love. I'm talking about fully loaded smashed crunchy potatoes. I'm going to turn on all of the burners, full throttle. Slide in my cast iron griddle. Once the cast iron plate is hot, I'm going to put on some beef tallow and let that melt. Once the fat is hot, I'm going to take a pre-cooked potato like this, put it on the griddle. Press as hard as you can to make it flat, almost like a chip. Then take your spatula and scrape them off and flip them around. Then load them up with cream cheese, get a nice big scoop on them, follow that up by some shredded cheese, and close the lid and let that melt. Once the cheese is fully molten, take it off the grill, then chop fine some chives, sprinkle on a little bit of your favorite barbecue rub, followed by the chives, and finish off with a nice dot of chili sauce. Now that is a good barbecue side dish, but now we really need to go back to that donkey. I'm gonna fire up my sizzle zone and the temperature of this thing can get up to 900 degrees. That will be more than enough to sear off my donkey. First I'm gonna sear off the fat cap that sits at the bottom at the moment and I wanna keep my eye on it, so I want it to go slow. That's why I'm starting with it. When you're cooking over a 900 degree sizzle zone of Napoleon, then you wanna move it around. Make sure of that. Move it as much as you can to make sure that you get a beautiful crust without burning it, because screwing this up means I will be stupider than a donkey. Look at that color on the steak. Looks absolutely freaking amazing. That is almost perfect. A little bit more flames. Wow. If this is the first roast you get from your wife after you married her, you're gonna be really, really thankful as a husband. Now I know this is kind of not the thing nowadays, but you know, I would appreciate it. All right, there's one last trick I need to tell you about. This roast is made out of 3 parts. That's why in the US they call this a tritip. On this part, the threads run in this direction. On this part, the threads run in this direction. And in the final part, right here, it runs in this direction. That's why we're gonna make 3 cuts before we start slicing this up. Then I'm gonna cut it against the grain into slices. And look at how good that looks. Cooked to perfection, juicy, tender roast. It doesn't get any better than that. Let's bring in the whole family. I want a couple of slices of that beautiful donkey. There we go, front and center, star of the show. My smashed potatoes, and finally my smoked tomato. The power is to you, man. Just go out there, grill it up, have a little fun. Now we get to eat all of it. I love donkey. Marcel, you want to try the loaded potatoes?